I'm deploying a model with no instructions, and you'll see the instructions with agents. So without further ado, let's deploy DeepSeek. And I'm going to talk about DeepSeek a little bit while I'm doing this. DeepSeek is the big China LLM model that came out that was really on par with GPT-4 at the time and the other frontier models. And but the Lucille there is already implemented. Let me deal with this real fast. My cleanup was not complete, but I can clean it up. There we go. Now we're back to this. So as you can see, I've already got Grok deployed. But anyway, back to what I was saying. DeepSeek, the website, is an application that uses the DeepSeek model behind it. What I'm doing here when I deploy this model is I'm deploying it inside Azure, inside of US East. That's the region I'm in. So it's being deployed inside the Azure ecosystem, totally disconnected, totally separate from the DeepSeek application, and the model itself is just accepts requests and provides responses. It's not doing external communication. It's sandbox from that perspective. And you can see there's lots and lots of different models here. You see Llama from Meta. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this DeepSeek and I'm just going to deploy it. This is how fast it goes. I'm just going to choose these standards. I'm going to grab this little value because I need that. This is how you're going to refer to it and deploy. And this goes pretty quickly. Done. So now it's available for use right there. So let's go over to the code. Call deploy model. Right now I've got this set up for Grok 3. But actually I didn't mean for the DeepSeek to already be there, but let's go ahead and enable that. That works fine for her. And that's the model. That's the value I just copied over a moment ago. So let's go ahead and run this and I'll talk about that while it's running. As I said, I didn't give it instructions. You can't give it instructions at the base model level. So that's what this role system is. So bigger. I'm basically telling it respond using Southern Charm and give me and then the user request, what the user would type is give me a brief history of London. And as you can see down here, oh, bless your heart for asking about London, darling. It's Southern Charm in it for us. And it's given us a little history of, then came the Middle Ages, sugar in London just kept growing. I love it. This is a fun way to test, actually, to ask it to like reply as Shakespeare or in Southern Charm or just in some, you can do Cajun, it'll do different dialects. It's kind of fun, and it lets you know that that code or that bit of information is being used. So, and that actually that's that demo. We all right there. This is the code to call it. It looks very similar to if you've used LM models in the past. This is actually almost the exact same code you would see prior to the Foundry. There would just be you would need to provide a version. The version is the one that you don't need to provide here. Just this deployment name. And like I said, I included some more information down here and a link as well to this guidance. And it's basically, when you submit a message to the model, it's encrypted in transit. Right at the edge of the model, it's decrypted into raw text and passed into the model. And so Microsoft has it right there. And then Microsoft gets the response. And that is decrypted over the wire with HTTPS. And the key is there's no logging or retention on the Microsoft side making that call. It's up to the client, you, to retain those things if you want to in your applications. It's a little bit different with the agents, and we'll see that when we get there. If you're just calling models, there's no logging unless you can turn on logging at the organizational level in some cases. I'm not going to go into that. I'm not that familiar with that. So moving along. Before we get to the agent demos, I want to talk about the source, like where would an agent get data and or what can an agent do? A lot of these sources are very similar to the Copilot Studio integrations. The interface is a little different, things like that. Warnings I'll give people immediately and up front, and this is where you see issues with Copilot for M365 when it's pointed to like SharePoint. You might have duplicate data or old data, and the key is if you're going to do document or SharePoint sources, it requires curation of the data. You have to determine it, like curation and governance. You have to determine which data do you really want to share, and it has to be, we only want one copy. Duplicates will cause hallucinations, and that's a sort of data set that you would want to maintain and keep it current over time. One nice feature of that is if you have important documents like that, they might be scattered about your network where the owner maintains the most current version. Having that in one place might be to your benefit as well, aside from its use for AI. We've noticed that as well. I'm going to I'm going to push AI functions the Azure Function apps for ways to make functionality available to agents. Because once I'm in a function app, I can do anything. It's anything that a function app can do, it can do. And so that's my primary. That's how we've done integrations with Dynamic and Slack. And so we we created a function app that is an interface that we call, and that function app then goes out. It builds the URLs for the API calls to Dynamics or Slack. The AI is doing that for us, and then makes those calls for us. Logic apps are also available. I don't have experience with those. I'm just including that for completeness. I do like public and private web content. This is a pattern I follow a lot, and it involves a couple different LLM calls. SERP is a way to search Google, basically, through an API. And so the pattern would be, I'll take a user's intent and ask AI, say, hey, give me some Google search phrases for this intent, and it will give me as many as I ask for, and then I call my SERP service, which is just an API, and it gives me back Google search results with URLs. And then I'll use the Python requests library, and I'll grab all the associated URLs, the ones that you can get at least. Sometimes, a lot of times you can't get those because of security. And little pro tip for you, if you're dealing with raw web content, it's really useful to use a small, fast LLM model such as GPT-4 Mini, and give it the raw text of a web page and say, hey, get rid of the HTML, get rid of any ads, get rid of the menu or navigation elements. Just give me the core content of a web page, and it's a nice, easy way to strip out the cruft in a web page to get down to just the content, and that gives you a small type package to use for inference in future calls. So, and don't always rely on inference against data. If you have a tool that can make the data smaller, use it. And the example would be like a SQL generation. Don't pass 40,000 rows. It might fit in the context. 120,000 token context is about 200 single-spaced pages. But don't give it 40,000 records and ask it questions. Use a tool if you can, and have the tool generate SQL or have it generate API parameters, and then filter down the data and make a final LLM call against a more tight data set. With the key, inference isn't knowing something. SQL is knowing something. Did I get a record back? Did I not? It's very, very explicit. Whereas inference inherently is probably, that's sort of, it's not 100% guaranteed. So with that said, and I throw these out because they're the basis of, like, if you have a use case or you're considering it, can you get data that would support performing that use case? Can you perform the actions programmatically? One thing as a consulting company we're interested in is LinkedIn. Everyone's interested in LinkedIn, but like that's a locked ecosystem. It's difficult to access. There's no API for it necessarily. So, all right, let's move into the demos real quick. The first demo, super basic. It's effectively a straight proxy to the LLM with instructions. ChatGPT has some system instructions. It takes the user prompt and then goes against the model. We have instructions. We're going to take a user prompt and go against the model. It's the exact same conceptual design. The agent was created in the AI Foundry interface. It doesn't access anything external. It's more about showing you what the code would look like. So go to my agents, and I have the aptly named basic agent. One thing to note, the agent ID, this is how you programmatically this is how you call an agent. You get to it by its unique ID, and just pay attention to that word hope at the beginning. And here's the instructions I've given it. As I said, when I deployed the model, there was no instructions. They were in the code when I told it to have Southern Charm. In this case, I'm asking it to just respond conversationally, and this is something else I like to do. This is a little catchier. It's harder to see or find. I'm asking it to catify it by replacing some common words with the word meow, and you get interesting results from there. And let's look at the code for calling that. In this case, I need the project endpoint and that agent ID. There's that hope. And here's the request I'm going to say. I'm going to say the same thing as I did down here. Give me a brief history of London. Let's clear out the terminal and run this. I'll run and we'll talk about it. The first thing it does is it creates a thread. The thread is like a conversation in ChatGPT. It's exactly like that, and I'll show you the thread once it's finished. And it sends the message, starting a run. This is actually where it executes. Sorry, down here, it's already finished. Apologize. This is what it did. It created a new thread, sent the message, started to run, and it got the message back. And so now it's got this history of running. It's in regular English, except you end up with things like this. Meow, it's a global powerhouse, blending historical landmarks. I'd love to do that because it's fun to read and say, but it's catified. And so that tells you that it used the instructions I gave it. It did this. And that told me everything is working as I would expect. I like it. Move it to production. And so that's the most basic. Let me get back to there. That's the most basic example I could come up with. One thing I've noticed, AI or Microsoft provides accelerators for some of these. They seem a little heavy to me in terms of trying to set them up. I more prefer straight Python files, like that one file calls an agent. I've got one file that creates an agent. The examples that I've come up with they're more granular, I'd say. Let's move on to the second one real quick. There we go. This one calls an Azure function. This is done using what's called the code first approach. It's how you access Azure functions or other API functions. You could call an external API, that sort of thing. I do recommend if you're going to call external APIs to have an internal API make those calls. I don't know if I'm not sure I would expose core raw external APIs as tooling for these agents. I don't know if I'd trust it. You get trust by controlling it. That's why I would wrap it in a function app. So the code actually, there's a couple things I don't like about it. The code contains a function definition that's similar to an OpenAI spec. This right here, I'd mentioned a method called get company financial information right here inside my function app. And in the code, when I create the code that creates the agent actually has to specify this. And then at that point, when you create the agent, you get the tool. So I go to this company financials agent, and down here, there's an action. So it's a tool, basically. And if I click here and say manage, this text right here is exactly this text. So when I created this agent, I gave it this tool definition, and it stored that definition. Basically, that stored it right there. Like I said, it shows up there. And then we're going to talk, I'll show you the code to call it, but there's code. I find the code to be a bit cumbersome because the code to call an agent with a function, some of this is a little bit, this is it looking at the results from the tools, but it's not a short one-liner or anything like that. It sets up a bunch of stuff. And again, your project endpoint, an agent ID. In this case, we'll look at RLEQ. It's not a word, but there's the RLEQ right there. So that's the method we're going to call. The user request I'm going to pass in is give me financial info for fake company. And the other things that are required here are the URL and the function code for the function app. I do actually see that as kind of beneficial in that you could swap them out. You could make these configuration or environment variables that can pull on the fly. Just go ahead and run that. I'm going to stick with this one. I have to move this myself. So it's creating a thread, sending it, that's starting to run. Right there, it pulled the word fake company. It identified fake company and pulled it out, and then made the call to the API method. It knows to do that because the definition I passed in said there's an input property called company name, and it says the name of the query. So the LLM said it took my request, give me financial information for fake company. It did two things. It determined I want to call this tool company financial information, and it parsed out the company name and passed that to that method. It did both of those on its own. All it was add the tool. I could have multiple tools. It would infer by my request which tool or tools to use. I haven't tried chaining in AI Foundry, but I know it works very well in here. Back to this. Yeah, actually, that was the whole demo right there. That code ran. Really quickly, I'll show you to create here's what it looks like to create them. So I define this custom tool. Again, it's just a text string. That's all it is. And then down here, it actually creates the agent. Creating the agent. There's the instructions. This was default boilerplate that was generated code. And if you look right here, it is your helpful analyst. When I ask for stuff, do this. It's giving it guidance on when to use the tools. And I think I might have just messed that up. Hang on, my screen has gone black for a minute. No, it's bad. Apologize. And then when you create it, you just basically say, pass in that tool definition. But like I said, this part can't be done through the actual interface. And then when you call it, you also have to reference it. In this invocation, it's actually just telling it exactly how to call it. And then it uses the definition to determine that it needs to call it, and also the input parameters. But this right here is the actual execution of it. So,
Jason, it looks like your screen is just showing black. Maybe close out and reshare.
Is that better?
There we go.
Sorry about that. My computer, most of my screens went black. It's only black for about 3 seconds. I was very bothered. But yeah, what I was explaining is that the code to call these is a little bit longer than I was hoping. And there's the polling, like it's all async. And what I'm thinking, I know it's like with Copilot Studio. At the very beginning, some of the tooling was difficult to use or didn't quite work as I expected, at least from our perspective, from our side. And I think the tooling here it's there, but it's I think they're going to clean it up so it's nicer. For instance, one thing we need to one thing that's missing at this point in time, in my opinion, is a clean integration from Copilot Studio into the AI Foundry agents. At this time, I have not found a way to easily integrate those. But again, the Foundry agents can share the same methods. That's why I showed this. This functionality could be gone either side. So you don't necessarily want to call or need to call an AI Foundry agent from Copilot Studio if it can get at your functionality more directly. It just comes. It's how many layers do you want to have to move through is kind of the question. What the question becomes. And with that, we have finished the demo portion of the presentation. Thank everybody for watching that. We're going to move to the QA portion. Give me 1 minute to change the way I'm sharing so I can go back to the traditional presentation look. Over to the side. There we are. John and Seth?
Great. Thanks, Jason. Great stuff. We do have one question in the chat. Please, if there's anybody else that has any questions, please feel free to add them at this time. Jason, I believe you touched on it briefly, but will you please explain the key difference between Azure AI Foundry agents and Copilot Studio agents? And then when would you choose one over the other?
Yeah, okay. I did touch on that, but the like Copilot agents, they're conversational. You embed them in a web page. You can embed them directly into your applications through a web part, or even if you're running WinForms, you could stick it in there. Because they can be exposed just as like through raw, like through an iframe is effectively what it gives you. But those are for user-facing conversations. It's when you want a user to talk to the AI. The AI Foundry is more, I want another system to talk to AI, or I want a scheduled process. Like maybe you have a daily news filter or daily news search, maybe you have 20 Google searches you'd like to do every day, collect the web page results and do analysis on something that changes every day, like a particular industry you're watching. You could have an agent every day that's triggered from a scheduled job that calls an agent that goes out and collects information for you. And then, emails it to you or presents it to you in some way. So that's a big difference. Copilot Studio, user-facing, AI Foundry, system-facing, more integration level type stuff.
Great. Thanks, Jason. We do have a couple other questions that were emailed in to us. For organizations just starting their AI agent journey, what's the most common mistake you see and how can they avoid it?
I'll take that one. It's understanding the tools and how they're implemented. A lot of times, people will try and stuff everything into one large LLM call, and they won't get the correct responses, or they'll put too much data into a context. They don't try and they assume that since you can fit 128,000 tokens in there, hey, I'm going to use all that, but that's like a book. Using the large context, my general recommendations are, if you want to summarize a long document, that's what your large context is, summarization. but don't use very large context for specific fact finding, especially if you have the tool available. Think about a file with 10,000 facts, and just think about it from a human perspective. You need to find a fact related to something. You're not going to go through all 10,000 facts. You're not going to sit there in Notepad and go through them. You're going to use the find. You're going to use a tool. You're going to search for something that gets you there. Same thing with AI. If you have a tool available to filter or determine the information, use it, even if it's another LLM call, to filter down the data that then a second LLM call does the actual analysis of just what it needs. That's how you avoid hallucinations. You minimize excess information in the context. That's where it gets confused when it has too much information effectively. But for summarization of long documents, a large context is great. Yeah, it just comes down to the way people are implementing the tools. A lot of the times they'll hook up to SharePoint and then except they haven't curated the data, and you have duplicates, you have old data, you get responses that just aren't accurate or are dated, and it's not the responses you want. And so data preparation is a really big step. And I think a lot of people don't see that, and they're met with, oh, wait a minute, I have to, I want to share these 2,000 documents. Oh, I got to review them and pick the ones that are important. I got to find the duplicates. It's a governance effort at that point. It's not just something you don't just do it unless you have a very specific set of documents that you'd like to make available to AI.
Okay, great, thanks. Another question from the chat. In your demo, the tool Get Financial Information, is that tool referencing a database or a function app? Then when using that tool, the LLM model is then creating the API call and getting the information. Would you need to set up a tool for each table?
That's a good question. As far as I know, every API call that you want to reference goes in as a tool. Let me share my screen a different way again, if I can show this. So other way. But in this one right here creates an agent and adds a tool to it. And so I gave it one function definition. I don't think you can do that at the API level. I believe you'd have to set a collection of tools and add them like this. This is basically a collection. So you would add a bunch of tools when you create your agent. The same thing applies, I'm going to this out real quick, to Copilot Studio. If I'm in here to add in tools, I have to add all of these independently, even though these are all in the same API. If I search for webinar, we'll find them down here. And it enters, well, that helps. It's a connector. And so I've got financial opportunity. I want the V2. Select out, hit recent leadership changes, pick a connection, add a configure. And you have to do this individually. So in the Foundry right now, it's code block that defines a tool, and then you add it to an agent, whereas this is the interface in Copilot Studio. And I'm not going to go through this. I was just demonstrating that you can add the same thing, and you're doing it at the API endpoint level, the method level, effectively. And in here, I would make sure, yep, there it is. That's the one thing you need. Like in this case, I know there's an input variable. It doesn't do it automatically. Wish it did, but it doesn't. And at this point, I could actually call this from the Copilot. And immediately, actually. Give me leadership changes that fake function. And when I talked about chaining, I'll demonstrate that in Copilot Studio. I know this is AI Foundry, but I found this fascinating that this works so well. Oh, hang on. I have to do, this is something that you seem to have to do it the first time you add an endpoint. It's like I'm having to validate to it or something. This should now say succeeded, connected. There we go. Retry. Now it should work. There it goes. Each leadership changes. What I found fascinating is it can chain these. So I've got two methods. Get opportunity list and get company or get financial information. I say, give me the top op percentage and the financial information for the company. This requires several things if you think about it. It has to look at the list of opportunities, find the top one. I'll show you the op list in a second. And there it's giving me that. It didn't say the percentage though. Oh no, here's over here, right there. Sorry, I apologize. Highest sales chance, 87%, and then it grabbed the financial information. So if I say give me the ops, it looked at this first. There they are. It looked at this first and picked the one with the highest sales chance. It did that automatically, and then called the second. It called op list, and then knew to call get company financial information because my request inferred that I wanted the percentage and the financial information. So it grabbed both of that. So it ran two in a row. I really like that. I haven't had a chance to go into the Foundry and see how it changed, but I'm assuming there should be a planner in there. Actually, I know there's a planner, and so it should behave sort of similar to that. Anyway, that was a really long answer. I'm just going to,
No, you're good.
and I'm just going to keep the presentation in this mode in case I need to go back as well. So,
Sure.
Any other questions?
One more. What kind of, around the data and everything, what kind of data preparation or curation is typically needed before connecting data sources to AI agent? Kind of what you were just doing.
That's what I just described. It's curation. You have to. It's about what your use case is, and you don't want to include a lot of. If you're talking about a set of documents and you want to share for a particular reason, you don't want to include documents unrelated to that reason. You don't want duplicates. I already said that. You don't want old ones. I mean, when you end up with that's why you end up with duplicate information a lot of times is because you have two versions of something. And that's the problem when you share all of SharePoint. If it's looking at my documents on SharePoint, I might have four versions of something. And if I ask about that something, oh boy, I'm not sure how the response is going to come back necessarily. If I ask it to list them, it's fine. But if I ask them for information about the inside of them, the content, that's when it'll start to get confused. So yeah, it's about it's reference data is effectively what you're sharing with AI. That's a good way to look at it. It's your reference. And like I said, it's an opportunity for companies that have data spread out all across their network, basically where their master versions of things are siloed by owners. And that's, a lot of times that's just because how organization organically grows, and that just, you end up with that. And once in a while, they pass those up to whoever needs them. But if you want to make those available in AI, you can you create a reference set of files. And that can be that can be very valuable for a company regardless of an AI effort. It's just it is a governance effort and a cleanup effort to get to that point, to get a clean set of data. Unless you have a very specific use case, you say, I want this set of documents is about this. Let's make that available. But a lot of times the scope of these the scope of the data ends up being wider than that, and it requires more effort to prepare the data.
Thank you. Another one, you mentioned that DeepSeek models in Azure adhere to Microsoft's data security policies. How does data governance work more broadly with AI agents accessing our internal systems?
That's why I like function apps. They control what AI can access. And that's your primary control. And as I said, calling the model is a safe operation in that Microsoft doesn't collect what's being sent. None of the information is being retained or used for training. It's just they're providing the model access as a service, and that's what you're getting out of it. I talked about when you use the model, it's not when you only go against the model. The very first demo where I set up DeepSeek, it wasn't, nothing was retaining the conversation I was having. However, when I was doing the Foundry agents, I talked about the very first step in the code every time. There's none down there in the terminal right now, where it said it was creating a thread. And that's, like I said, a conversation in ChatGPT. And then it basically adds messages to that and then communicates to the LLM that way. That Foundry, by default, saves all the threads. And it's not the best user interface, in my opinion, because you can only deal with individual threads. So for instance, there's our conversations we've had during today. Click on the top one up here, and this shows me if I'd had more conversation, there would be more conversation listed here. But this has actually been captured. Everything I spoke was captured here. So by default, it appears that the Foundry agents will log all of their usage effectively. And I think that this is threads that are universal across the agents. So if I click on this one, it's got a thread ID, and this one's giving me a brief history of London. So they're different messages. That's a financial summary. So that was the one that called the function app. And this is the one that just called the LLM to, there should be the word meow in there somewhere. There it is, meow. And that's a really important thing to point out is that The Foundry is saving your conversations, but it's only saving it into the Foundry itself, which this is your private area right here. So, oh, one other thing, I meant to do this during the demos. This is really cool. And then it's just, if you're not aware of it, it's a really neat trick. It's a Copilot trick. So I'm in here looking at this endpoint, and I can look at this and I can copy it. But if I want to change this, how do I change this? I don't know. I'm going to grab a screen cap of it. I'm going to go over to Copilot. I'm going to say, if I change this, guarantee in AI Foundry. And then it just paste the screenshot. This is what I love about it. Okay, you can just grab a screen cap, describe it, send it. You get 100% perfect OCR from screenshots, unless you got weird fonts. Just because. There you go. And so it says, okay, it says go to the Foundry thing, but it actually wants you to go to the Azure version of it. So over here, this is Azure AI Foundry. This is my Turpin AI Foundry that I've been working in. Turpin AI Foundry right there. And what those instructions said is go to the endpoints and keys section. If I go in here, show my keys, L7V is the start of that one. If I go in here, L7V, so that's this API key. And so if I wanted to maintain that, I would go in here, and this is what I'll do after this meeting, of course. I'll press this regenerate key. And that gives me my new key. But what I love about this is just this is unrelated to the content. I just was so impressed by this. I can just copy and paste screenshots, and you can walk through setup screens and stuff step by step doing this super effectively if there's things that give you problems. So sorry, that was just a pro tip, just throwing it out there.
No, we appreciate it. All tips are welcome. So these are some great questions. We have a few more, but we're in the interest of time and keeping everybody's time in mind. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next section. Please reach out, and we'll be able to speak with you individually if anybody has any more questions.
Thanks, Jason and Seth there. So now that you've seen the potential of AI agents in Azure AI Foundry, the natural question is, how do you get started in your own organization? This is where we shift from concept into action. Starting on this slide, you'll notice we've put a small QR code there on the right side that you'll see throughout the rest of the presentation. That code will take you directly to the Oakwood website, specifically to our AI Agent in a Day workshop page. All you need to do is enter a few quick details, contact information, and one of our sales reps will reach out right away to you to help you begin that journey. This workshop is designed to give your team the confidence and clarity to move forward quickly and to do so in a structured, proven way. Next slide. The overview of what the AI Agent in a Day is, it's built around these three core pillars. Rapid deployment. In just one day, we'll help you build a functional prototype agent using your own data and use cases. Second, expert guidance. Your team will be working directly with Oakwood's AI specialists who know not just the technology, but also real-world business scenarios where agents create impact. And third, practical learning. Your team gets that hands-on experience with Azure AI Foundry that they can immediately apply after the workshop. So at the end of the day, you don't just have knowledge, but you have a working agent prototype and a team that knows how to take that next step forward. What to expect? Well, let's walk through how that process works. We start with a short prep phase, usually 1 to 2 weeks. During that time, we align your stakeholders with the right use cases, and we make sure that your environment is ready for the workshop. Then comes the workshop day itself. This is where real value happens. We deploy assets into your Azure tenant, build a functional proof of concept agent using your data, and work hands-on with your team so they understand the approach. The whole point of the streamlined process is that you don't need a long, drawn-out project just to see results. In a matter of days, you can evaluate the potential of AI agents for your business and decide where to take them next. So, our call to action, what's next, really comes down to 3 steps. Go ahead, schedule your AI agent in a day workshop. Use that QR code. Then you can begin to discuss your use cases with our team. And then begin that journey from idea to impact. That QR code, as I keep mentioning, is your fast track. Scan it, drop in your information. We'll get in touch with you to help start you on that journey. The best way to realize the value of agentic AI is to start small, prove it quickly, and then scale across the businesses. That's exactly what the workshop was designed to help you with, and we'd love to partner with you on that journey. So I want to thank everyone again for spending that time with us today. We've shown you what the possibilities are with AI Foundry, and how agentic AI goes beyond chatbots to deliver real business impact, and how Oakwood can help you from idea to implementation. Again, on behalf of myself, Jason, and Seth, we truly appreciate your time and your interest in learning with us today. We're excited about the future of AI agents, and we'd love the opportunity to help you take that journey from idea to impact. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Oakwood team. Really appreciate a great session. If anyone has any questions, feel free to reach out. We will post the recording along with the slides in our Azure for Education team channel. I'll go ahead and drop the link right here. Just go to that web page. You'll see the link there to join the customer team. Please allow at least 24 hours for us to process your request. It'll be uploaded to channel number 7. It's called Learning Opportunities. And with that, folks, thanks for joining us for today's webinar. Great session. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everybody, for joining.